Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look for ways we can spread the gospel of Jesus Christ around the world. Today, we have with us Mr. Danny Williams. He's the promotional director for Alabama Free Will Baptist. Brother Danny, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Brother Eddie. It's a joy to be with you.
Now, tell me, you've got a pretty cool logo there, the Alabama Free Will Baptist. What does that logo actually mean?
Well, when we started this position, we wanted something fresh. Something gave us a description of our purpose. And so the logo is simply the shape of Alabama, which, of course, gives us our geographic distinction. And at the bottom of this shape of the state are the words Free Will Baptist, which gives us our theological distinctive. And then there are two emblems at the very center of the state. There's the cross, which I think all of us recognize the importance of the cross and what Jesus has done for us in dying on the cross. And then also a world, or a globe, if you will, which carries out our responsibility to get the gospel to the world. And so what we think it communicates is at the center or at the heart of Alabama Free Will Baptist is the cross of Christ and the Great Commission. And that's what we try to do as a state. Month after month and year after year, our emphasis, if it doesn't help promote the Great Commission, it's really not something we're trying to do. That's our priority, and so that's the logo. And we have given pins out to many of our pastors and our people just as a reminder. That's at the center, at the heart, are those two things.
And it's really beyond the logo, because it's something that Alabama Free Will Baptist have put into practice, especially when we think about your support for missions. How is it that you've been able to really more effectively give to missions, maybe than, or just be more effective with your giving?
Well, that actually goes back about 25 years. We'll be celebrating 25 years this year of what we call the Alabama Acts 1-8 Mission Support Plan. It goes back to 1997, where we were at the State Association, and that year is at Forestdale there in Birmingham. And some representatives from Arkansas came over to meet with us, and they described the Acts 1-8 plan that they had put into practice in Arkansas and shared it with us. And our leadership had been wanting to do something that we could make a difference for the missionaries and their travel and the pressure that was on them to raise the funds. And so this seemed to be an ideal thing for us to adopt. And so we voted at that state meeting to adopt that program. It was a $192,000 budget, and it covered about 6 missionary entities. Not their total budget, but at least half. And if both of them were from Alabama, it covered their entire budget. And so that was the beginning. And $192,000, we made that budget that first year. I remember the executive committee discussing that year. Are we sure we can raise $192,000? We weren't sure. And the state had never really done anything on a statewide basis cooperatively. And so this was a new approach, but it resonated with the people, and they bought in, they took it on as themselves, ownership, if you will. And churches were challenged, and individuals and Sunday school classes were challenged to take a share. Brother Rick Cash was our promotional director then, and he said, buy a share for $20. And so we took $192,000 and divided it into shares, and he hit the road trying to get folks to commit. And that started the program, and it has grown and multiplied since then. We added our state home missions to it. We have formed some partnerships in it as well, including some seminaries and Bible institutes and building church buildings and just a number of things. So we could go into more detail if you're interested. But this past year, our budget was this year our budget's $594,000. we hit the 600,000 mark in income last year for the first time in the history of the program.
Hmm. Wow. So in other words, it just took off and spread all throughout Alabama, didn't it?
It really did. We had, at that time, we had probably about 110, 115, maybe 120 churches that were part of our state. And those early years, I remember we were at 75, 80, 85 of our churches gave something to the ACTS program. And so those budgets started growing and churches started putting it in their budget and individuals started giving. And we've raised about $12.5 million for world evangelism since this program's been in place.
Wow. And that's nothing close to what you were doing before you put the Acts 1-8 program to work.
That's true. And one of the benefits of this program, the way I've tried to share it with people, is that there is a cooperation involved. There's something encouraging and I don't know, more than encouraging. It's exciting when people work together and see something accomplished. And we tell people that cooperation is a key. We did an acrostic, ACTS, A-C-T-S, Alabama coming together for the Savior. And we really emphasized the idea, let's do this together. And it just resonated with the folks. And then a second reason we pushed it was for convenience. By writing one check, giving one gift, whether it's from the church or from an individual, they are able to support international missionaries. They're able to support state home missionaries. They're able to support our partnerships with Bible institutes and seminaries. They're able to invest in building church buildings, sending out missionaries. In fact, that's been some recent areas where we have expanded. And so we're not just giving money to our American missionaries. We are supporting a Cuban pastor as a missionary in Uruguay. It's just, it's given us so many more opportunities. And then I tell people the third word that matters, it's cooperation, it's convenient, but it's also a conviction. And I hasten to say, not a conviction that you have to give Acts 1-8, but a conviction that people have to know Jesus to go to heaven. If that's our conviction and we believe that, then we ought to be able to get behind a program like this that gets that message out. That's our conviction that we're fulfilling the Great Commission.
Wow,
So it's been great.
It's been good. So I'm listening, I'm in a church or a state or maybe a district and they don't have something like this. What kind of recommendations would you make for me to try to set up something like Acts 1-8 wherever I might find myself?
Well, obviously, it's not something you jump in and just real hastily do something. I give credit to our leadership that they took time to think it through and pray about it and began to lay the foundation of the need, expressing the need. And it's not just reaching a budget. It's the need of getting the gospel message through missionaries and through church, local churches, and through partnerships with IM or whatever. The idea is that we share the need. And then once we shared that need, and I think the thing that motivated most of our people was past missionaries having to do so much travel and the pressure of raising those funds and the money that you spend going here and there trying to raise the money. Why couldn't we accept that responsibility? So that's what we did. And then we brought in some folks who had done something similar so that we could recognize it can be done. Somebody else is doing it. So I think we started small also. We didn't try to bite off too big of a bite. We took just our international missionaries. And at that time, Dave Franks Sr., Dave Franks Jr. Were on the field. Jamie and Tammy Lancaster were brand new, just getting ready to go to the field. Mike and Kathy Corley were going to Russia. And then we had two ELIC folks connected to our program. So that was the start. And though that seems to be quite a bit, it was really for statewide. That was doable. You could see the possibility. And then we let it grow as you need to. So my recommendation would be to share that need and then take an effort to start small. And our tendency is we want to do it all at once. And I think because we took our time, and then obviously the other key ingredient is there has to be someone who takes on the responsibility of helping raise those funds, at least the organization of it. And for us, it was our executive director who hit the road and did that. But it wouldn't have to be a full-time individual, but it's got to be somebody's got to kind of keep the message going out, putting it out as much as you can.
So really you're talking about, you guys decided we want to be good stewards, and you're trying to get as much as you can for your resources. It takes money for missionaries to travel and try to raise funds. So you're saying we'll take that, we'll do that ourselves. You had mentioned earlier, if both missionaries were from Alabama, that you give more toward them, but if one is only one was from Alabama, you provided for that one, but they knew that amount was probably going to be taken care of. So it was helpful to them. And then you've got the leadership, your pastors. You mentioned Brother Cash doing the good work he did, really helped bring it all together to make it happen.
That's true. And I do think that, the different amounts were significant because we knew that other states, at that time there was a movement where other states were adopting that. It's not quite like that now. The dynamic has changed some, but from what we were looking at, it was us taking the responsibility of our own people. Mm-hmm. We were sending them out. I think it's a New Testament illustration. The Church of Antioch sent Paul and Barnabas. And so Alabama sent Kathy and Mike Corley and Tammy and Jamie Lancaster. And there were those who, there was times that the International Missions Office would say to us, well, if they're in your budget for this much, we're going to count that as good, because we were trying to make sure our program, we had areas where if we needed to cut, we could, in order to make sure we were taking care of the missionaries' responsibility. And but thankfully that didn't occur very often.
That's great. But it's a way they can know what's coming in, get people
Exactly.
to the field quicker, and keep people on the field. It really does have a great commission. It helps advance the Great Commission, doesn't it?
It does. Well, and it's come full circle. We invested in partnerships pretty early on, because we, as a state, we didn't have a whole lot of missionaries. Sometimes you have to change. The Franks I mentioned, both of them came back to the States. And so the number of missionaries fluctuated. And when the number of missionaries dropped, we didn't want to drop our giving. We wanted to keep doing what we could. And so we included a line item in our budget for international missions for missionaries who just needed it. They didn't have to be connected. And we still do that to this day. As a percentage involved there. We also found out through those partnerships the benefit and the value of training pastors and church planners. Our partnerships have been with Russia and Cuba and Mexico, and those are where and all three of those, of course, had Bible institutes or seminaries, and we help fund some of that, because we believe that training pastors and church planners multiplies the carrying of the gospel. Where we could send one missionary couple, we could do a whole lot more by training 10 or 12 in a Bible institute. And so that happened. And then I mentioned it came full circle. Our partnership with Cuba, we have Yusvani and his family now have left, Quinones have left Cuba, have gone to Uruguay to take care of a church that needed a pastor. And they didn't have the funds, obviously, from a Cuban area and from that kind of income. So what we did is we stepped up and said, if you're willing to go, we'll help send you. And so we've been funding them, and it's thrilling to be able to see a country like Cuba send missionaries. And we tell our Alabama churches, the Great Commission is not just for Free Will Baptists, and it's not just for American Christians. It's for every Christian.
Yeah.
And so those countries need to be sending them as well. So that's the full circle that we've seen, and it's heartwarming and thrilling to see what God's done.
Well, that's wonderful. And hey, we appreciate you sharing with us today, and we appreciate what Alabama Free Will Baptists are doing to advance the Great Commission. And it's just so exciting to see what is happening all across the world. And much of it generates from what you guys are doing there in Alabama. Thank you, Brother Danny.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you today.
And we want to thank you, our listeners, for listening in today. We want to encourage you to share this podcast with those folks who might be interested. And we want you all to remember that we truly are better together when we work together for the cause of Christ. Thank you for being with us today.